Jacob on the matter of corroborating the Bible with historical documents and history, geological research. The purchase of Esau's birthright. Gordon provides information on this episode in Genesis 25. Few incidents in family life seem more peculiar to us than Esau's side of his birthright to his twin brother Jacob. It has been pointed out that one of the Nuzi tablets portrays a similar event. The tablet to which Gordon refers is explained by Wright. Esau's sale of his birthright to Jacob is also paralleled in the Nuzi tablets, where one brother sells a grove, which he has inherited, for 3 sheep. This would seem to have been quite as uneven a bargain as that of Esau. Esau said to Jacob, "Give me, I pray, some of that red pottage, some soup to eat." And Jacob said, "Sell me first thy birthright." And Esau said, "Behold, I am about to die of hunger. What is a birthright to me?" And Jacob said, "Swear to me first." And he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and a mess of lentils, and he ate and drank. Free explains further. In one Nuzi tablet, there is a record of a man named Tukitila, who transferred his inheritance rights concerning a grove to his brother, Jerpazah, in exchange for 3 sheep. Esau used a similar technique in exchanging his inheritance rights to obtain the desired pottage. Horn, in his recent illumination of the Old Testament, Esau sold his rights for food in the pot, while Tukitila sold his food still on the hoof. Sold his for food still on the hoof, sorry. The Jacob and Laban episode. Cyrus Gordon claims that we can understand even Genesis 29 by episodes in the Nuzi tablets. Laban agrees to give a daughter in marriage to Jacob, but he makes him a member of the household. "It is better that I give her to thee than that I give her to another man. Dwell with me." Kind of like a deal. You dwell with me, and then I can tell you what to do anytime I want. That's what happened. Genesis 29:9. Our thesis that Jacob's joining Laban's household approximates Wulu's, a person mentioned in the tablets. Adoption is borne out by other remarkable resemblance with the Nuzi document. The stolen images episode, Genesis 31. This event has been explained by other Nuzi discoveries. The following from J.P. Free's Archaeology and the Bible is a good explanation not only of the episode, but also of the background of the Nuzi tablets themselves. Over 1,000 clay tablets were found in 1925 in the excavation of a Mesopotamian site known today as Yorgan Tepe. Subsequent work brought forth another 3,000 tablets and revealed the ancient site as Nuzi. The tablets, written about 1500 BC, illuminate the background of the biblical patriarchs. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. One instance will be cited. When Jacob and Rachel left the home of Laban, Rachel stole Laban's family images, or teraphim. When Laban discovered the theft, he pursued his daughter and son-in-law, and after a long journey, overtook them. Commentators have long wondered why he would go to such pains to recover images he could have replaced easily in the local shop. The Nuzi tablets record one instance of a son-in-law who possessed the family images, having the right to lay legal claim to his father-in-law's property, a fact which explains Laban's anxiety. This and other evidence from the Nuzi tablets fits the background of the patriarchal accounts into the early period when the patriarchs lived, and does not support the circle view, which holds that the accounts were written 100 years after their time. Sounds like circular. Anyway, thanks to archaeology, we are beginning to understand the actual setting of much of the Bible. Joseph, selling into slavery. K8 Kitchen. You ought to read as much stuff as you can relative to the Bible. It really clears up a lot of things. He brings out in his book, Ancient Orient and Old Testament. Get that title. Take a look at it. You can probably get some articles online. Genesis 37:28, he says, gives the correct price for a slave in the 18th century BC. The price of 20 shekels of silver paid for Joseph in Genesis 37:28 is the correct average price for a slave in about the 18th century BC. Earlier than this, slaves were cheaper, averaged 10 to 15 shekels, and later they became steadily dearer. This is one more little detail true of its period in cultural history. The visit to Egypt. The possibility of Joseph's visit to Egypt has been questioned by some. Miller Burroughs points out, accounts of going down to Egypt in times of famine bring to mind Egyptian references to Asiatics who came to Egypt for this purpose. A picture of visiting Semites may be seen on the wall of a tomb at Beni Hassan, which comes from a time not far from that of Abraham. Howard Voss also points out the presence of the Hyksos in Egypt, who were the rulers. They conquered Egypt and ruled it for a while, and things went bad for Israel. But we have much more than the pictorial representation from Qutb-Hotep's tomb to support the early entrance of foreigners into Egypt. There are many indications that the Hyksos began to infiltrate the Nile Valley around 1900 BC. Other contingents came after 1730 and overwhelmed the native Egyptian rulers. They conquered a group of people, and then they left a ruling conglomerate there that were minority in population, but of course they represented a military conquering force, so the Egyptians complied. So if we take an early date for the entrance of the Hebrews into Egypt, they would have come in during the period of Hyksos infiltration, when many foreigners were apparently entering. And if we accept the date of about 1700 or 1650 BC for the entrance of the Hebrews, the Hyksos would have been ruling Egypt and likely would have received other foreigners, especially the same tribe types or same peoples type. Voss goes on to draw 4 connections between the Hyksos tribes and the Bible. 1, the Egyptians considered the Hyksos and the Hebrews as different. 2, it is a possibility that the rising Egyptian king, who was antagonistic toward Joseph's people, was the nationalistic Egyptian king. Naturally, such a fever of nationalism would not be healthy for any foreigners. 3, Genesis 47:17 is the first instance where horses are mentioned in the Bible. The Hyksos introduces horses to Egypt, make them a powerful military force. 4, after the Hyksos expulsion, much land was concentrated in the hands of the monarchs. This fits with the events of the famine that Joseph predicted, and through which he strengthened the crown. So Joseph's promotions. The following is a summary of Howard Voss's discussion of the question of Joseph's admittedly unique rise, found in the Genesis and archaeology. Joseph's being lifted from slavery to prime minister of Egypt has caused some critical eyebrows to rise. Oh, sheer fantasy. But we have some archaeological accounts of similar things happening in the land of the Nile. A Canaanite, Mary Ra, became armor-bearer to Pharaoh. Another Canaanite, Ben-Mat Anak, was appointed to the high position of interpreter, and a Semite, Yan Hamu, or Jau Hamu, wish I could pronounce these right, became deputy to Amenhotep III, which charged over the granaries of the Delta, a responsibility similar to that of Joseph before and during the famine. Apparently there's only one famine, so this might be Joseph. When Pharaoh appointed Joseph prime minister, he was given a ring and a gold chain or a collar, which is, only one famine of that time, and a gold chain or a collar, which is normal procedure for Egyptian office promotions. Yamhamu held then a very prominent position in Egyptian affairs. His name appears in correspondence from princes up and down Palestine, Syria. At the beginning of the Rib-Haddah period, Yan-Hamu seems to have been in charge of the issuing of supplies from the Egyptian breadbasket. Well, let me fix that. Called Yaramuta. And we have already seen that Rib-Haddah was apparently constantly in need of his services. E. Campbell, commenting on the Amorna period, further discusses this parallel of Joseph's rise to power. One figure in the Rib-Haddah correspondence constitutes an interesting link both with the princes of the cities in Palestine to the south and with the Bible. He is Yan-Hamu, whom Rib-Haddah at one point describes as the Musalili of the king. This term means, in all likelihood, the fan-bearer of the king, an honorary title referring to one who is very close to the king, presumably sharing in councils on affairs of state. Yan-Hamu held then a very prominent position in Egyptian affairs. His name appears in correspondence from princes up and down Palestine, Syria. At the beginning of the Rib-Haddah period, Yan-Hamu seems to have been in charge of the issuing of supplies from the Egyptian breadbasket called Yaramuta, and we have already seen that Rib-Haddah was apparently constantly in need of his services. Yan-Hamu has a Semitic name. This, of course, suggests further parallel to the Joseph narrative in Genesis, beyond the fact that both are related to the supplies of food for foreigners. Yan-Hamu offers an excellent confirmation of the genuinely Egyptian background of the Joseph narrative. Notice, genuinely Egyptian background, not borrowed or fantasized. But this does not mean, of course, that these men are identical or that they function at the same time. Indeed, Joseph may better fit into the preceding period for a number of reasons, although the evidence as yet precludes anything approaching certainty. It is clear that Semites could rise to positions of great authority in Egypt, especially during the Hyksos rule. They may even have been preferred at a time when indigenous leadership got too powerful or too inbred. Hence what I said. With regard to Semites rising to power in Egypt, government, Kitchen, with reference to various ancient papyri, comments, Asiatic slaves in Egypt attached to the households of officials are well known in later Middle Kingdom Egypt, 1850-1700 BC, and Semites, could rise to a high position, even the throne before the Hyksos period, as did the Chancellor Hur. Joseph's career would fall easily enough into the period of the late 13th and early 15th dynasties. The role of dreams is, of course, well known at all periods. From Egypt, we have a dream reader's textbook and a copy of c. 1300 BC, originating some centuries earlier. Such works are known in first millennium Assyria also. There you go. We have Joseph's tomb. One of these pictures, I have pictures in this article or somewhere else. Joseph's tomb, John Elder in his Prophets, Idols, and Diggers reveals, in the last verses of Genesis, it is told how Joseph adjured his relatives to take his bones back to Canaan whenever God should restore them to their original home. And in Joshua 24:32, it is told how his body was indeed brought to Palestine and buried at Shechem. For centuries there was a tomb at Shechem reverenced as the tomb of Joseph. A few years ago the tomb was opened. It was found to contain a body mummified according to the Egyptian custom. And in the tomb, among other things, was a sword of the kind worn by Egyptian officials. 11. Regarding the patriarchs. Next time.